morning, everyone, to this new episode of the Next Page podcast here at Labyrinth Archives. This is a new episode of the Ambassador series, and we have the honor to have in our studio today the permanent representative of China to the UN office in Geneva. So I'm very pleased to welcome you, Ambassador, today. Ambassador Chen, you've been permanent representative here in Geneva for a while. Please tell your audience a little bit about yourself and how you came to diplomacy and to be the permanent representative of your country to the United Nations here in Geneva.
Thank you very much for having me today. It's my great pleasure to share my views with you and with the audience about China and about China's relationship with the external world. As for me, I have been involved in multilateral diplomacy for many years. I served in the International Organizations Department of the Foreign Ministry and the Permanent Mission of China to the UN in New York, back and forth for a couple of times as a junior diplomat, counselor, political counselor, then direct general, and etc. So I'm engaged also in China-EU relationship for several years. And I'm part of the Chinese delegation to numerous international conferences. I also worked in 1 year in Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region as the Deputy Director General for Foreign Affairs there. And I was a member of the Chinese delegation also to some other regional cooperations like APEC, G20, the BRICS, etc. In 2019, I was here as permanent representative of China to the UN office in Geneva and other international organizations in Switzerland. I should say I've been very much honored and lucky enough to not only witness, but to be part of the process of China's relationship with the United Nations. As I remember, when I first joined the Foreign Service in the early 90s, China's share of the total UN regular budget was only 0.79%. And at that time, there was no single Chinese soldier in the United Nations peacekeeping operations. Now, China's share of the regular budget of the UN is now 12%. And over the last 3 decades, China has sent 40,000 peacekeepers under the blue helmet to 25 UN peacekeeping missions. These are the only tip of the big picture of China's involvement in the United Nations affairs. At the same time, I also feel a great sense of responsibility as ambassador representing my country to dozens of international organizations and agencies here in Geneva. So I've been here almost 5 years. Now, the life here is not an easy life because we have to look after so many dimensions. But I believe Geneva is such an important platform for multilateral diplomacy, which is very much closely linked with the daily lives of all countries in the world. I stand ready to work together with my colleagues here to provide positive energies to this changing and challenging world, to facilitate, for instance, the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal, so as to promote peace, development, and a common prosperity, of course, from a Geneva perspective.
Let's start our conversation, Ambassador, and thank you for that introduction. Talking about your country, this is what we do when we invite permanent representatives here to give our audience a sense of, the history of each country. And China, for sure, has a fascinating history spanning millennia. So Chinese civilization, when we think about Chinese civilization, we see a rich texture of diversity, ethnicities, cultures. Everybody knows that much. But for those who do not know your country that well, how would you present China to our audience? And what perhaps are the key moments of the history of your country?
Indeed, I should say the Chinese nation is both old and young. The Chinese nation has developed a unique civilization and value system over the history. And the Chinese culture has many important principles, such as pursuing common good for all, regarding people as the foundation of the state, and pursuing lifelong self-cultivation and integrity. 2,000 years ago, we have a couple of great thinkers such as Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Mozi. They together explored a wide range of topics from nature to human beings and raised the various of concepts such as universal benevolence, virtue, and love, unity among diversity, harmony between human beings and nature. If you look at history, there are so many dynasties, ups and downs, but I should say China was the front runner in terms of this overall national capacity in history for a number of times. And our ancestors also traveled across grassland, desert, and reefs to open the Silk Road, both on the land and on the seas. So promoting extensive exchanges and friendship among peoples in many parts of the world. The Opium War in 1840 brought China into a miserable and chaotic period, characterized by foreign invasion and occupation. Chinese people has carried out courageous fight to save the nation. And in 1921, the Communist Party of China was born, determined to seek happiness for the Chinese people and the rejuvenation of the nation. Since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949, tremendous changes have taken place with great success in economic and social progress all over China. Since 1978, that's the time I was part of the college studies, China embarked a grand journey to reform and opening up to the outside world. This enabled China to achieve historical achievements in all aspects, in terms of, just name a few, in terms of the whole process of people's democracy, in terms of economic and social progress, with China becoming the world's second largest economy, and of course in terms of reinforced international cooperation. While pushing forward its course of modernization, China stands ready to make contributions to world peace and development. And in the meantime, we are always ready to share our experience to the others so as to help each other. For example, the Belt and Road Initiative has created the largest platform for international and regional cooperation. More and more countries have welcomed and enjoyed fruitful cooperation in this process. And my president is now in Europe. And Belt and Road Initiative is one of the top agenda items during his visit to Serbia and Hungary. So I'm sure with all these cooperations continued, more and more people will benefit from this initiative.
Thank you very much. Let's take a look now, Ambassador, to China in its region, yeah, and also in the world, of course. But first, in its own region, you know, it's a growing importance to the world, but also to the various countries in Asia, of course. And so our audience would like to hear maybe what is China's role in the Asian region today, and what can be said, you know, about the relationship of China with your neighbors in the context of the Asian region.
Indeed, Asia is home to one of the earliest human settlements and important cradle of human civilization. This vast and beautiful continent covers 1/3 of the Earth's land mass and 2/3 of the world population. It has more than 1,000 ethnic groups living in 47 countries. So diversity is one of the major features in this region. I should say the Chinese civilization is an important part of the Asian civilizations. We have an old saying that a close neighbor is more relevant than a distant relative. Asia is our common home. Making it a better place is the shared hope of all of us in this region. We have made joint efforts with our neighbors to find a unique Asian way for getting along well with each other. That is a friendly, good neighbor relationship with each other. This is characterized by mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and cooperation for a win-win situation. For instance, we always support ASEAN to play an important role in regional cooperation. Last year, for example, China and ASEAN were the largest mutual trading partners for the fourth consecutive year. Southeast Asian countries are important partners for the Belt and Road cooperation. A large number of cooperation projects, including the China-Laos Railway, the Jakarta-Bandung High-Speed Railway, have boosted economic growth and benefit the people in the region. Another example is mutual visa exemptions is realized between China and Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. This year, various events will be held during the China-ASEAN Year of People-to-People exchanges to enhance mutual understanding and build closer bond between the peoples of the two sides, especially among the younger generation. Another example is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. With the joint efforts of all concerned, it has become now a regional organization that covers the largest area and the population in the world. In short, China cherishes our friendship and cooperation with our neighbors. We will continue to work together to seek the common prosperity of all of us in this region.
And I think this is relevant also, this concept of prosperity, to China's place in the world today, because this is something that we hear from diplomatic speeches here in the UN, this, common future and how China wants to contribute to that. So let me ask you then a follow-up question, Ambassador. What is China's place in the world today, seen from, of course, the position that you are in as ambassador to the UN? What message does it bring to the rest of humanity?
This is a very important question. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. As I said in the other occasions, 75 years is such a short glimpse in history, but it means a lot to China, to our relationship with the outside world. China's rapid development has been achieved in tandem with its increasingly closer cooperation with others, both bilateral and multilateral, both political, economic, and also social and other aspects, both at the leaders' level, political trust, which was substantiated with multidimensional cooperations. We have an old saying that a single tree doesn't make a forest. In this world nowadays, all countries are becoming more and more closer to each other. Nobody can stay unaffected in the face of various global challenges. China, as one of the members of the world family, will continue to take good care of our own business. That is a better life for our people. In the meantime, we stand ready to lend a helping hand to others, of course within our ability, and to make our contribution to the world peace, development, and common prosperity, as I indicated earlier. We wish to see an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, which serves the interest of all of us. In 2017, President Xi Jinping delivered a major speech exactly here in Geneva, offering his vision of building a community with a shared future for mankind. Since we are on the same boat, we navigate over the uncharted water. So we need to paddle towards the same direction and with the same spirit. And this is of vital importance to overcome various challenges and to achieve a win-win situation. Let me share with you one important event is going to be happening. This year also marks the 70th anniversary of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. It was born in Asia 70 years ago, but it's endured tests. But I should say, these important principles endured tests of time, remains very much relevant to this changing and challenging world. With the same spirit, China stands ready to make joint efforts with the international community to build an open, inclusive, clean, and beautiful world that enjoys lasting peace, universal security, and common prosperity. So the road ahead may be bumpy if we're looking around. We are living in such a delicate world full of challenges and difficulties. But I should say the future is bright as long as we work together.
And indeed, I remember you mentioned the visit of your president here in 2017. I was among the fortunate people that got to be in his presence and got to hear his speech. And in that speech, there was a lot of indications in terms of multilateral diplomacy and the overall vision of China for its membership in the UN. And of course, China is a member of the United Nations. Is a permanent, one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. So if you don't mind, Ambassador, let's move the conversation to China and the UN, China in the UN. So what assessment can we make today of China's journey in the UN since the beginning to present day?
Actually, it's a long story. Let's put a long story short. Geneva is a platform of particular importance to China's multilateral diplomacy. In 1954, Premier and Foreign Minister Zhou Enlai led the Chinese delegation to the Geneva Conference, marking the debut of the young People's Republic in the international arena. In 1971, with the growing and strong support of our friends, the General Assembly adopted Resolution 2758 with an overwhelming majority, restoring the rights of the People's Republic of China and recognize the representatives of its government as the only legitimate representatives of China to the United Nations. Since then, our relationship with the UN entered a new chapter. Over the last 5 decades, China has joined almost all universal intergovernmental organizations, signed more than 600 international conventions. As one of the permanent members of the Security Council, China has fulfilled its international obligations, including, as I mentioned earlier, send peacekeepers to various field missions over the world. We firmly uphold the central role of the United Nations in international affairs and actively played our parts in the promotion of peaceful settlement of international disputes. In the meantime, as the largest developing country, China was among the first to reach the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. We met 10 years in advance the poverty eradication target set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, reducing the world's poverty-stricken population by over 70%. In response to the development deficit, China advanced the Global Development Initiative to boost the implementations of the Sustainable Development Goals. In the face of the climate threat, we have contributed to the consensus at the COP28, that is the UN Climate Change Conference. China will cut our carbon emission intensity by the biggest margin in the world in the shortest time frame in history. We support the establishment of an international artificial intelligence governance under the UN framework so as to jointly achieve our shared goals of AI is good for all, because this is artificial intelligence has attracted so many attentions around the world, and so many endeavors has been conducted. So we need a concerted efforts, hopefully under the UN umbrella, so to make the best use of the artificial intelligence, of the benefits of us all. In the days to come, China will, as we did before, continues to support the United Nations to place leading role in the global governance. We are ready to further strengthen our cooperation with the United Nations and other international agencies to promote multilateralism for the realization of a better world for us all.
Ambassador, what is your view as permanent representative of the key global challenges facing multilateralism today and the member states of the United Nations in particular?
This is a very pertinent question. We need to ask ourselves. We need to ask each other. Indeed, tremendous efforts have been made over the years to create a better world envisaged by the founding fathers of the United Nations. United for a better world remains the common aspiration of peoples all over the world. At this moment, we need to ask ourselves, have we become more united as we should? Is this world a better place as expected? If not, why and what are the root causes behind? We have to admit that challenges and uncertainties remain, both traditional and non-traditional, specific and thematic. The world economy has yet to be recovered in a better shape, and the development gap has yet to be further closed. We still have a long way to go to meet the sustainable development goals. Issues of common concern need to be addressed, such as regional conflicts, crises within and beyond borders, climate change, artificial intelligence, pandemic diseases, natural disasters, and of course, unilateralism and power politics, double standards. All this have made our life very much difficult. In short, we have to face the deficit of peace, of development, and of trust. I should say lack of trust or the political will is one of the most serious challenges needs to be addressed. To rebuild trust, we need to identify the reasons behind first. Let me take example of my personal experience in the Human Rights Council. The Human Rights Council is a very important agency here in Geneva. It will convene 3 times a year, each time around 4 or 5 weeks. If you can imagine, if a group of member states claim themselves as judges and teachers while treating others as suspects and students without equal treatment and minimum respect, and pressing others to live a life as I do, I should say if this kind of mindset remains, it will be very much difficult for us to rebuild trust. Actually, to many countries in the global south, the realization of human rights is like climbing a mountain. It's only fair and more democratic to allow each and every climber to choose the road and the speed based on its body conditions and equipment. Moreover, if human civilizations are reduced to only one single color or model, the world, I should say, would become a place too dull to live in. What we need is to respect each other as equals, to deepen mutual understanding through dialogue and cooperation, with view to rebuild trust and to work together to the same goal of a better world.
Taken from your last comment, Ambassador, how should a country then make itself, as a member state of the UN, useful in the UN community, the community of member states in the UN? How should a country contribute to upholding multilateralism and maintaining collective security in the future?
This is a question deserves a good debate. almost everywhere. I think it's important. To me, I should say, to be a responsible members of the global village, we shall stay committed or recommit ourselves to the UN Charter, which is the cornerstone of the post-war international order. Its principles such as respecting sovereignty and territorial integrity and non-interference into the internal affairs have already become the basic norms governing modern international relations. The problems we facing today are not because the UN Charter has become outdated, but because its purposes and principles have not been effectively respected and implemented. I think this is a key linkage in this question. To be a responsible member, we should firmly uphold the international order underpinned by the international law. Law is the very foundation of governance. This is an important guarantee for upholding fairness and justice, to addressing global challenges and safeguarding the sovereignty, security, and the development interests of all countries in this world. So we need to ensure equal participation of all countries in international affairs, regardless of their size and strength. In the meantime, unilateral sanctions, which runs counter to the international law and hinder the development of others, should be resisted and abandoned. Otherwise, the life of those weak and vulnerable will become more difficult. We need to cooperate for a win-win situation and make joint efforts to cope with all these common challenges. For this purpose, there is an urgent need to rebuild trust, as I mentioned earlier, by treating each other as equals, by respecting each other's way to organize oneself, and to avoid a kind of one-size-fits-all approach. So it's very much advisable to put ourselves into the other's seat, to feel, so as to have a better understanding towards each other, so we can read each other's mind in the right way, to avoid misjudgment. We need to take concrete steps to promote peace, security, and development in a concerted approach, because security is a very broad concept. It covers many, it's like a cake with many pieces. So we need a concerted approach. We just wrap up the spring session of the Human Rights Council here in Geneva. We are now fully engaged with the upcoming conferences of WIPO, of WHO, of labor organization, and the pandemic treaty negotiation is still going on. We need, through our concrete cooperations, to find a common ground. We need to try our best to move forward and then moving towards each other to make all these negotiations a consensus-building process, during which the trust could be rebuilt gradually.
Thank you, Ambassador, for this quite clear portrait of China's trajectory in the UN from the beginning to the most recent challenges, including the pandemic treaty you were mentioning, that is very much in the making right now. Ambassador, as we wrap up our episode together, I was wondering if you have one message, a special concept that you want to leave with your audience before we end.
We have an old saying again: it will be difficult to tell the shape of the mountain as long as you are inside the mountain. So I'm very much looking forward to the observations and advices of you all. In conclusion, I should say China will continue to pursue its own development and a better life of our own people. Of course, in the broader context of the world development. So China's development, I should say, it's a positive energy to the world development, and the other way around as well. The world economy, if could develop in a steady and prosperous manner, then it will be very important for us to enjoy the the whole development. Solidarity brings strength as long as we could unite it as one and light more candles rather than complain too much about darkness. I'm sure we can make a difference. As Charles Dickens put it, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Dag Hammarskjöld, the second UN Secretary General, once observed, the creation of the United Nations is not to take us to heaven, but to save us from hell. It is true that the performance of the United Nations over the years needs to be improved. There's a lot we should do to improve the performance of the United Nations. But as a matter of fact, the United Nations is still, nowadays, the most authoritative, irreplaceable international organization, which remains very much relevant and pertinent, and it deserves the support of everybody, which deserves your continued support as well.
Thank you, Ambassador CHEN Xu, Permanent Representative of China to the United Nations in Geneva. Thank you for taking the time for being with us on this episode.